One thing I learned, if I wanted to take a break, make sure I turn the speaker off, or I just take it off so I don't have those accidents. All right, welcome. I want to thank everybody for coming this morning. One of the things that we are now going through a transition, because you're moving away from SchoolMax over to Illuminate. And you're going to feel some pains in that transition because you've been using SchoolMax for years. And so going into a new system, no matter what system you use and stuff like that, there would be headaches. The good news is with Illuminate, it is more robust. So once you get in there and you begin using it, it's going to be easier to get data out and actually to see what the data is. And there's also, from my standpoint, from working and doing state approval for years, it has all of the controls that's required. There's no, we can identify errors in advance. We don't have to go in and have them show up during the audit. So it's a very robust system, and it's designed to meet the state compliance. So we'll go over that with you. One of the things first is I want to go over what it is the state requires. I know there's some questions about, why are we now requiring certain things when we didn't have to do that with SchoolMax? SchoolMax, you were approved many years ago. The state has changed their approval system, where for any new current system, there's new regulations and there's tighter controls. We're now getting into things not being done just for state funding. We have child safety. We had a child that was abducted in Northern California, and the district lost in this lawsuit because teachers were not taking attendance every period, every day, and records show that for that child, it wasn't on the auto dialer because that specific teacher did not record the student as being absent, so the parents were not timely notified, and they felt very strongly that if the school district had notified them timely, especially within the first 24 hours, they would have been able to recover their daughter. So this is why we are now getting into child safety, making sure we understand it's not just about state funding. We have the safety of the children on campus, and we have our due diligence to make sure we're accounting for students and we know where their whereabouts are, and timely, when possible, notifying the parents. So what we're going to do first is go over why we have to do what we do. What are the requirements by the regulations? We went over those with the school administrators here from 7:30 to about 8:40 this morning. And then what we're going to do is actually get in how you're supposed to do the daily, weekly, monthly through Illuminate. And what we've done is we've been working with Fremont and with Illuminate to design for you what I call personalized procedure manuals. When I started at the school system back in 1970, there wasn't anything. Basically started my job, and I went in and I go, okay, how do we do this? I want to do it the right way. And they go, just follow what the person before you did. And I go, they didn't leave a roadmap. There's nothing here. So what do I do? And they go, well, if you don't do something right, the auditors will let you know when they show up. So that was not a very comfortable feeling for me at all. So this is where I began working with the State Department, Kim Clement at the time, John Gilroy, and saying, tell me what it is I need to know. I don't want the auditors coming in and writing me up for everything I'm not doing right. And then what I was able to do was take that out and develop procedures so that anybody that's coming in after me, I wanted them to have a clear roadmap and make it really very clear for everyone. In the event I had subs, anybody coming in, I could have staff come in and follow that. And we knew that our sites were safe. And I know for staff that was out ill, they loved it because when they came back, the work was done right instead of all chaotic, and we had issues after that. So we developed for you your own personalized manuals. Elementary is different than what we'll be doing with secondary, but we do have your own customized, personalized training. So what I'd like to do is, because we have a large group here, they are also recording it. They let me know later, and I'm thinking, do I want to be recorded or not? Because when I do, I'm very nervous, but I'm fine with it. But what I'd like to do with the questions, if you allow me to get through a section, and then what I will do is I will open it up for question. That way we're covering the materials, and they're going to be using it for subsequent training. That way we'll have all the training in there, and then we can open it up for questions at the end. Is that all right? And I'll make sure that we get through all of the questions today as well. So one of the things that's known, and you will know it better than anyone because you're working directly with the teachers, and you are the first face with the students when they come into the offices as well. The thing that the state controller knows, this isn't your independent auditors, this is statewide. These are the known control deficiencies. They know that not all teachers take attendance daily. Elementary is better than secondary. At the secondary, they have multiple teachers, so not all of the teachers do it. The other is they're not submitting attendance daily. They're waiting and they're saying, we just don't have time, or instructing, we don't have time to submit it. With the new online attendance system, it's very easy. They actually have the class roster where you can have the picture of the student. So it's not like my twin grandsons, when they're in there, they can tease the teacher and one is switching seats with the other one and kind of fooling the teacher. They cannot do that with those photos that they have. So teachers, they can't post prior or back post. The attendance has to be recorded that day. The only exceptions are, of course, independent study, where you have to pre-post to fill the date for independent study. And then once the teacher evaluates the work and tells you how many days, then you can go back and make it retroactive back to the agreement period. So those are some of the exceptions. The other one is signing the weekly attendance rosters. We have to make sure that they are doing that. We are now with online attendance, and that's been a requirement for over 10 years, that for online attendance systems, they have to do it because it's basically out of sight, out of mind. They no longer have a manual roster they're keeping and turning in daily and returning back with those records. Once it's in the system, they want to make sure that they're verifying the accuracy of what was recorded in the system. What can the consequences be? They can be major. I just worked a couple months ago with a district that had a $6.9 million penalty because their teachers were not signing on rosters weekly. And again, they had been doing it where they were used to doing it monthly, and they switched to the online system, and were doing online for a couple of years. They got new auditors. The new auditors came in and said, you are required to get new approval for the online system, which now required weekly, therefore you're out of compliance. So we were able to get that reduced down, but they still had to pay a penalty. We never want your district to be in that. So I'm going to go over with you what it is that the worst kind of auditors, which would be the state controller, they're great auditors, but they know the rules, and they look very detailed. They're not like your local auditors. They have a short window. They're coming in and only doing testing of about 1/3 of the schools. State controller comes in, and their focus is to find non-compliance, and they want to recover money because that's how they move the money back into school districts that are compliant. They take from the ones that aren't doing it, and then that helps bring more money back in to pay schools who are doing it compliantly. So what are we doing? Winger and Associates, basically what our company has done is come in, and we're working directly with Fremont. We're also letting you know we've been working for the last 3 or 4 years with Illuminate, working with them to make sure that the system is designed to make sure it's compliant, as well as to be very user-friendly, to give you what we call at-a-glance desktop information that's more readily available than what you have with SchoolMax. SchoolMax, it was an old COBOL system. You'll see the reports and stuff. They were very, very old looking. You couldn't get a lot of the information. You would have to request it from your information systems. With Illuminate, it's more robust. We can even do customized desktops, see what only you want to see. Once you get into it and we understand it, you're going to love it. So this first transition period is going to be more challenging, but once you get in it, again, everybody used to the system, you're going to love it far better than what you had with SchoolMax because of the way the data, it drills down to the student level. Not only where it's at the program level, we're able to drill down to the student level and actually see at a student level what's going on with them. So what we've done is we've developed for you, and each of you, don't they have their own individual packets, right? Personalized procedures, so we did create for you your own. You'll see that separate manual there, your own, that's it, the one that's spiral bound, that is your personalized procedures. I know some manuals are really thick like this. We don't want to give you things you don't need to know. We want to give you things to get it and make it clear, very succinct, daily, weekly, monthly, so it's not like add, delete, and getting into those. What do you do daily? What do you do weekly? What do you do monthly? And then we have the actual screenshots and step-by-step screens to do that. Then if you need more information on some of the other functions, Illuminate will have those available for you. We're currently doing the professional development, and then what we're going to be doing is randomly, I'm going to look at a few of the sites before I go meet with the state. My goal is to meet with the department here by the end of the month, 1st of November, submit to them on behalf of Fremont your procedures. We'll have a full document, one for the information technology, business, elementary, secondary, and continuation. We'll go meet with them. They're not out here physically, so they don't know what's happening. So we have to document it at a level and explain it to them. This is daily. Those key things I showed you earlier, we'll point to them and tell them this is where it is. This is what they're doing. They have great confidence that I don't put my name on it unless I make sure that it is as I'm saying. So when we go up there, we'll be coming back within, we're hoping, 60 to 90 days. 90 days is about the max that we have to do, where we will have approval for the district. So that's good news. We'll have state approval on that. So what are the required procedures? First thing is we've got to make sure those teachers are taking attendance daily. It is the law. It's required. It is a condition of any new state approvals. That's one of the first things that they look at. What are the procedures you do at your elementary and secondary to make sure that every single day, every classroom teacher is submitting attendance? There is an illuminated thing called missing attendance report. I call it the MAR report. So it's the MAR report, missing attendance report. So what you'll be doing is generally within the first 20 minutes, there's nothing set in stone on this. The regulations said it should be, not the regulations, it's basically a policy by the department, but it's not something they enforce. They won't come in and say that teacher did it in 21 minutes, so now they're out of compliance. The key is, did they take it during that day? If they've done it, we're fine. So generally you have some guidelines, you say within the first 20 minutes, but those are only general guidelines. We're not gonna hold it hard and fast. So exceptions, of course, would be if you have non-classroom based. Of course, the students, you know they're not gonna be there for independent study or on home and hospitals. So for those type of teachers would not be required to take attendance daily, but the classroom ones, where we have students in the classroom, they are required to log in, record attendance, and they're only recording either absent or tardy. By default, it is present. So they only have to click absent or tardy, or if they clicked absent before they hit the submit button, they can go back in and change it to tardy. Once they hit the submit button, only the school attendance office would be able to change that record. So once it's recorded and submitted, then there would be the subsequent follow-up with a tardy slip, sign in, sign out sheet as the audit trail as to why. You have to monitor this for elementary. Generally, your teachers, I'm assuming the majority of them will do it the first in the morning, so that if you get compliance in the morning, you're done. However, if you have that one special teacher that you have a challenge with, and believe me, I had a special teacher that was pretty much a lot of my career, that was the most challenging person, that would refuse to take attendance and do things. They would take the time to stomp on their records and turn it in and tell me why this wasn't necessary. But the bottom line was it was the regulation. So here, if you don't get compliance by the day, what we would do is the following day, we would print off the report again to see if that teacher by chance logged in before the system went down at midnight and recorded it. Field trips would be an exception, like with out on a field trip, so they take attendance before they leave. They should take attendance before they return to make sure that they have accounted for all the students. The other here is there should be no names on that missing attendance report. If there are, the regulations say, not regulations, but the state approval process says as the audit, because we expect 100% compliance, then what you will be doing is you can send an email to that teacher or teachers that were on the list and state, send me a list of those students who were absent or tardy in your classroom yesterday. And it's required that we have that so we can update our attendance records. They will email it to you. You'll print off that email, make the change, and just staple it to the back of that report showing that you met 100% compliance. Now you're showing in the system it wouldn't record it, but now I've got evidence that we did do our follow-up, and we have recorded absence or tardies for those students that weren't marked yesterday. So that's the audit trail. Because when we went up to the state, we go, we'll be very truthful with you. There's no way every single day, 180 days, we're going to get 100% compliance. We need a way that we can meet compliance and do it through the paper trail. So this was an acceptable condition for them. Questions at all? So you will save that email along with that, and then that's your backup documents. Any questions on that part? Kendall, I was going to ask, can we also, I heard that maybe we would look at doing it with an auto email to those teachers. So we're looking at, so that you don't have to manually write out these emails, we could come up with a generic email that when this happens, you will press what's called an email button for those teachers, and it will automatically send those off to those teachers.
And it may not be an email, maybe be an alert from the system.
Okay.
So we're still playing around with that, looking to see how we want to pursue that.
But it's something here within the next few months. We're going to have it to streamline it more for you. Or you can just come like my staff, what I would have them do is just write up a thing, and then they could cut and paste it into the email so that we had the same language going out, and it made the process a little bit easier for them. And I know there were questions.
Yes, if the teacher has a sub, is it okay for them to write down the names of the kids who are not there and the number of lunches and then send it to the office and I can do it?
Yes, what you normally would be doing is you can also print off of Illuminate what's called a manual class roster for that day. And then what they can do is they can put the information on that and turn that into you. And that would be the practice you want to use. Because what the state says is if that classroom teachers, in which they're not going to be present on 100%, then we need some means for them to notify you as to the students that were absent or tardy. So generally they would turn in the manual class roster, sign and date it. And then when we get to the weekly one, that one would be filed with the weekly to show for the days the teacher was absent. The sub does sign and date for that. So you're doing it the right way. You're getting from that sub, they need to notify you. Any other questions? Any other questions? Yes.
On this required procedures where it says within 20 minutes after school starts. And just so I can understand, make sure I heard you correctly, this is a suggested time frame?
This is suggested time frame. The key, you would want to do it before you do your auto dialer. And generally, a lot of the school districts have the auto dialer in the morning and the afternoon. So you want to make sure you've done it before the auto dialer so that information is as accurate as possible. So you might set like 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock, depending on when your auto dialer is. Yeah. Okay, great.
Doesn't have to be the actual manual class roster form, does it? I'm thinking about like prep teachers and PE teachers. They're just whatever they bring in on their slip and they just write down who's absent. But do you want it should be on the manual class roster official?
Well, with the PE teachers, generally with yours, they're only coming in not every single day, right? They're coming in because it's elementary, or do you have ones that are every day? Every day? All right. And do they not have access to a computer terminal? Oh, all right, because that's the way my husband was. He was out. They should still be turning in. They should have a class roster then. So what you can do is you can turn it in. They should be turning it in to you every day. Or what you can do.
Because it's not the same time every day. It's a teacher. Because if they have a morning prep, unless the teacher has 2 preps before the 10 o'clock deadline,
Okay.
then I'll give the teacher the first prep a roster. Because basically they'll be in the classroom at, before 10 o'clock. It's usually like the first prep.
All right.
And, because half of those teachers will not take attendance, and so it's just easier for the homeroom teacher to take attendance.
And you're in the elementary, so typically what happens in the elementary too is the primary classroom teacher walks the students, right, to the PE. So they still have control over those students, correct? So it's your primary one, but they are just leaving them there with it. It's not like it's a secondary where the bell rings, they leave the classroom, and then they physically walk over. So as long as the primary teacher is walking them to the PE teacher, the primary teacher would be the one that would be taking the attendance.
I think ours is very similar.
Yeah, ours
Okay.
don't, and they will not do it.
The
because
classroom
we're lucky-
teachers?
No, the prep teacher. We're lucky that we get a lunch count from the prep teachers. PE, science, and computers. We're lucky we get a lunch count on time from that, for them to turn in a attendance
But you have at least, what I'm asking on this is the classroom teacher does take attendance, correct?
After they get the kids
After.
back.
After they get the kids
Yeah.
back,
About
all right.
9:30ish, because they don't.
So
get-
for your first one, your first auto dialer and stuff, you do have like an absence form or something that they can list those for you, or do you not?
No, my calls don't go out till around noon because
Oh,
I
all
have a
right.
late start that comes in at, a late start kindergarten class that comes in at 11:40.
Right.
So,
All right,
So
so,
we're
it-
good.
so you're good on that. The
Okay.
key would be before the auto dialer, you already know the situation. Your primary teacher, the one that has control over the students, will be recording the attendance. Because you've got where the students with the PE teachers, basically the primary teacher is the one that's providing the instruction. They take the attendance and then they take the students to the PE.
No,
All right.
they do it after.
They do it after.
All right, but they're still accounting for the students,
Of
the
course.
PE
Yes,
teachers
right.
coming back. All right.
And it's just that the classroom teachers, because of that lag, they're not aware when their kids are tardy until after they've taken attendance, and then we go in and clean it up.
And you guys should know when they're tardy because you require them to come through that. So you'll have those slips claimed. All right, the key is, do you have adequate procedures in place? At the elementary, it's different than the secondary because with the elementary, you've got more control with your classroom teachers. All right. Yeah, you're fine with that.
My prep teachers do take attendance, and so we give them like a little half sheet, and so they write on there what teacher they have, who's absent, and how many lunches, and that gets sent up to me. So, and then I go in to illuminate under each one of those teachers and do the attendance of whatever.
On their class roster,
Right,
right.
on the roster. Should I be saving those little
Yes.
half sheets?
Yeah, that is your official record. Yes, so whatever the teacher is providing to you becomes the official register. Yeah, it is. No, you keep that, and that is your evidence of why you went in and made that on behalf of that teacher. Yes, starting today, keep those. Don't toss those out. Yeah, the key is we have to have an official source document. So with them providing that absence listing, the lunch count, that is the official source document. You're using that to go in because you're still under the primary teachers. You have the attendance in that system, which will be recorded later, but you're getting information earlier than because of that early prep that they have. You should have them sign and date. You should have those prep teachers just signing.
I have another question. Okay, so I have a teacher that says, I can't get into my computer, or my battery died on my computer, and they send up this big note that says, all here, present, room 11. And then they send that in. Do I have to keep that?
Well, you
Even though
need to
they
keep-
don't sign it?
Yeah, you have them sign it, and turn it in. Because they're having less more, not with Illuminate as much as maybe with the wires going into their room or something. Either that or they're like my husband where he was not computer savvy and he would do something every day to the computer. It wasn't the computer system, I called the loose nut behind the keyboard. He couldn't get it right.
Every so often, the internet goes down.
Yep.
All right.
Teachers call and say, I have so many absences, so-and-so is absent, I have so many
You're right,
lunches.
right.
Will they have you turn something in writing in every time?
You should have something in writing, but if you've got the call and you're saying it's down and you're recording that and saying the date you've spoke with them, that's adequate information for the auditors.
And real quick, guys, just in regards to going down, I know a week and a half ago we had a 10-minute down period.
Yeah.
And that was literally what we had was a 10-minute down period where you guys were down, a couple other districts were down, and that was something with our data center, which we went in and fixed. And it's one of the things we do at Illuminate is when that happens, that problem is always like that 1 in a million chance, but with every software company, that 1 in a million chance happens. So we fix it, so now the next time we have something, which hopefully won't be soon because we've done all this other stuff, it'll be something else that we'll have to go in and do another redundancy. So we have a bunch of redundancy to prevent it from going down. A lot of what I've seen here at the district have been one of the sites that I was talking to over the phone, the teacher did not have any internet connection because they didn't have an Ethernet cable connected.
Right.
And then slowness as well due to older computers or poor connection. With Illuminate, you may sometimes see a slowdown. That does happen. That doesn't happen often. As Joe and I were just saying, I was kind of being funny, saying we're perfect and we never have problems. But we do have a 99.9999 up. So we're up. A lot of the times it's just when we're down, it's usually, slower. You'll notice some speed issues. So that doesn't happen often, but it may happen. So as Gary's saying, having those contingency plans to go to paper attendance if it does occur.
Right, I think at least for us at Mission Valley, it's not I mean, obviously those things happen, but for us, I think the problems are site-specific.
And they
If
may
all
be-
of a sudden, I'll have a block of classrooms, they don't have any internet. No
Yeah,
one knows
that's
why,
understandable.
it just happens.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then later on in the week, I'll have this classroom down, and then they're up,
Yeah, that's us too.
so.
So just having then in those cases, 'cause I mean, that's completely out of my control and your
Oh, yeah.
control
Oh,
and
yeah.
probably
Yeah.
even the district's control
Yeah.
there, right?
Right.
Contingency plans like she's saying where you've got that
Right.
paper attendance ready to go.
Okay.
Yes.
A clarification from an auditing point of view. So she's saying, teacher calls in, I've got so many absent, and we go in and put it in. We need a paper trail of that?
You will take, let's say you spoke with the teachers because the
Right.
system
But
was
I
down.
want that where? I mean, on my daily attendance or
No,
something?
the ones that you're entering it in, so you put down that this was verified by phone by the teachers because the system was down.
Where am I putting that? This is verified. I'm putting it in Illuminate, but then
You could, yeah, notes. Illuminate actually has notes in there. Yeah, so Illuminate has the notes section in there, so you can add notes to it. Yep, you can do it. Yep. The other one you're going to get pushback from the teachers is on submitting the attendance daily. Where is it in the law that it says that they have to do this? It's actually in the regulations. It's the California Code of Regulations, Title V, and it's 401. It's C. It looks like a copyright thing, but it's actually 401C on there. It says that each teacher is required every day for each period that they are teaching to take attendance and to submit it by that same day. So it's daily attendance every day for every class that I'm teaching on that. So with the online attendance, it came back in saying, well, the teachers say, okay, well, take attendance every day, but show me the law that says I have to sign the weekly roster, that it can't just be for my homeroom. I'm running into that with other school districts when they were on School Max, because those systems were approved prior to 2002. So what we have is state with the online attendance coming on, very, very strict with their approval process. So the law in terms of online systems, which is what Illuminate is, this is where you're going on. The teachers are using the online system to record the students' attendance, and it's submitted electronically. From the state's viewpoint, that's out of sight, out of mind, so they require weekly verification. So for elementary, generally, you can run yours at the end of Friday or Monday morning. It's up to you. So once you know that your teachers have taken it, you can run the weekly. You distribute it to them either, in their boxes so that on Monday when they come in, they have their attendance rosters. They will be signing and dating and returning that to you by Tuesday. So it'll be the following day, Tuesday afternoon, not morning, Tuesday afternoon.
So I went into, we have a long-term sub.
Okay.
And so she's been submitting a weekly, that's what the printed attendance that I gave to her. So in a sense, she isn't going in and inputting because she doesn't have a code or a password to get into Illuminate. So she turns this into me and I input it in for her. So when I print out these weekly attendance for that particular classroom, I had noticed that in the parentheses that's usually the teacher's mark has been a minus, which shows on the little key, not enrolled. And she had questioned me about that, and I said, wow, that's really odd. None of my other teachers, because they go in and they physically put it in. So my question was, is it because I am,
It's
the input
because you're
is coming
using-
from my
That's right.
end,
That's
not
right.
her end,
That's
that's why
right.
I'm showing the,
That's right.
okay, but it doesn't show my students unenrolled or anything like
No,
that.
it's not.
just-
Well, it's just showing that the teacher wasn't the one that recorded the attendance, that the office staff did. It's for what's called the adequate internal controls, especially when we get into the digital signature, which we're planning on doing once we get you approved for the weekly online and we show the state that you've had no issues with that. We will subsequently go up and ask for digital signatures. Basically what that is the audit trail. It shows your logins and it shows who did the attendance and when they did it. And it'll have what's called your CPU or IP address. So it's basically showing what computer you logged on to and where. Because the state, it used to be where they didn't want them taking it at home on the weekend and after the fact so that they would be able to trace that down. But it's a real nice audit trail so that as a teacher I can go in and pull it up. If I have questions, they'll actually have that report available because they can show I did the attendance this day and then it can show who changed it. And the nice thing with Illuminate, you also see that you have two codes. You have the first one that shows what the teacher did, and then the other what it was subsequently changed for. That was because of the concern with the teachers on, well, I marked the student absent. Why are they marking them present? Well, they were marked present because they were in the school office meeting with the counselor or the principal, or in the nurse's office. So they indeed were present here. They just weren't in your classroom, so your record was right. But for apportionment purposes, we had to show where they were. So that's the audit trail for that.
So for auditing, when they see this under weekly attendance, or I'm sorry, weekly, the teacher sign-off sheets, they're not gonna question, they're just gonna know that the teacher didn't make the inputs because.
That's right, because they're a sub. What you should be doing, especially if they're a long-term sub, is they would be getting what's called, you can print off for them, a weekly roster.
Which is what I do.
A weekly roster, they'll sign that and turn that in. That now becomes the official record.
Okay, and I input that, but at the end of the week, when I go ahead and do these, it comes up with that little minus, which is, I was concerned about, I didn't know if that.
Right, it's because you've done it, the teacher hasn't done it. The teacher, it shows that the teacher's not the one that's submitting it. The attendance office is doing it.
Where are you marking the attendance? Are you marking it on the teacher screen?
No, through class roster.
Okay,
So if the
and you're
teacher
marking
turns
it there?
yep,
And
I
it's coming up
input
as
it
a
there.
minus?
On the weekly verification, when I go ahead and print out my
Which,
weekly
which is
Can
the
you
minus
respond to
on an
that,
absence
Kendall?
or a tardy?
it's on all of them.
Yeah, let's see.
Kendall's gonna look at it. He's the Illuminate specialist.
So
Mark it as an A first in the teacher section, then when you do your
That's how I do
portion,
it. That's how I
then,
do it.
and it's coming up as a minus?
On the weekly verification, so I go
Really?
into the teachers'
Yeah, and you mark
class
it as
roster
an
and
A,
they say so-and-so is absent, I put an A,
and then you go to mass
and then I
attendance.
do my absent reconciliation.
Okay, because
report.
I have the stuff
And
that's
then
like
I'm all
that too.
good, everything's
Yeah.
all good, but
And
it's
then
only
you
when
put
I
that
do
on.
All right,
the.
so Kendall will work with you on that. So Kendall will work with you on that. What I'd like to do, yeah, what I need to do is I need to get through the other sections. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna go ahead and go on to the other sections and then I'll come back. So I'll stop at the end of the thing. I need to get, because we're recording it, so I need to go ahead and move on with the next section on that. So one of the things is the state says also that the teachers cannot post date or do future date. And again, the only exceptions would be if they're an independent study teacher. The only exceptions are downtime. So if we had a power outage, we could, through IT, we could get information to open the system back up and allow those teachers to go in. Generally, if they're going to have a power outage, you would have some manual roster that the teacher, so we'll talk about those procedures on the monthly, but they would be signing. If there's a power outage, you've got to have a manual roster that they are signing. So usually we'll go through that with the monthly. We'll have what's called the monthly backup procedures, just in the event of an emergency where we have something for the teachers to record the attendance. We'll talk about that. The other one here is this is the weekly. So the teachers are required to sign the weekly verification forms. Exceptions are, of course, subs are going to be in there turning them into you daily. So you're already going to have it. If it's a substitute, a long-term sub, and they're in there, they are the now official teacher of record, so they would be signing. The key is who is in the classroom with the knowledge to know whether those students are absent or present. If it's not the classroom teacher, it's going to be a sub. So daily substitutes would be signing and dating those. If they're a long-term sub, they now are the teacher of record, and they would be signing and dating those weekly verification forms. They do need a sign and date, and the reason why the date's there, you'll see it on the form. There's also a certification statement just above it that says this is true and accurate, and this is why Illuminate programmed it to show teachers' entries versus what the school office and attendance staff is entering. So there's two separate records. They're verifying only whether the student was absent, present, or tardy, not the reasons for the absences. So the absences do not all have to be cleared before they sign and verify that. The date is important because that lets the auditors know, was it within the statutory timeframes or is it like a year later? So they're wanting to make sure that they are signing and dating those. Again, if it's a short-term, or independent study, you're not going to get those signed on a weekly basis. Those are always going to be after the fact. The other one here, these are the things we need to make sure when we leave today, we talked with the school site administrators to make sure they know these are the requirements and that they can go ahead and work with the teachers to ensure this is happening. They have to take attendance the same day. Again, elementary, I don't see the issues I do at the secondary level. Teachers submit it, and then they need to make sure that they are signing the weekly attendance rosters. Again, substitutes will sign a manual one that you're providing, and then they'll turn it in. If they're a long-term sub and they have login capabilities, they can log in and take it. It depends on how they're set up. How do we improve attendance? One of the things is our focus is to reduce down the excessive absences. As you know, it's not the truant students that are driving down the ADA. It's parents who call in, and all of a sudden you're getting excessive excused absences, and the regulations say you may question that if you have a pattern. So most districts, I don't know, do you guys have an excessive absence policy? A lot of districts say after X amount of absences. What is yours? After 5, you may require a medical note or evaluation, other evidence because of the patterns. After 3 days? Okay, so it's 3 or 5 days somewhere, but you do have an excessive absence policy to make sure that the parents know. You can't just keep telling us your child is ill. We would need additional evidence if the pattern becomes over our threshold, either 3 days or the 5 days. The other one that we're going to talk about is requiring the parents to provide you an explanation either the same day, at the latest, the next day, and absolutely within 72 hours or 3 school days. There is a regulation that requires it. We were going to look at opportunities for short-term independent study. The nice thing, the way that Illuminate is set up, we no longer have to disenroll the students from the classroom, put them on independent study, keep a log to find out when they're returning, and then go back in and change it to the regular classroom setting. They have what's called a program override function. We'll get into that. It keeps them enrolled in the school so it doesn't mess up your gain and loss report. It basically is for attendance funding so that you can track the students that are on independent study separate from the ones that are on the seat base, and it automatically defaults back to the classroom at the end of the term of the agreement. So we'll go over those details with you. The other here is in terms of parents. This is where we need to communicate the policy out to them, even like with our auto dialers when we're communicating with them. The law tells them, and it's California Code of Regulations, they are required to provide you an explanation either the same day of the absence but no later than the following day. Your district's policy is basically 72 hours or 3 school days. So 3 consecutive school days where they haven't notified you. You've got the auto dialer out. That's your due diligence. The auto dialer goes out. You also have a recording system where they can call in. You've given them all that information. As a the school personnel as well as the district policy, you've done your due diligence. You've notified them. Their responsibility was to contact you that day or the next day. After 3 days, if they don't notify you, 3 consecutive school days, the regulations say you may change that from an unreconciled absence over to an unexcused or unexcused truant. So basically what this means is they would then become subject after 3 unexcused absences to the truancy law. And we notified the parents of that regulation. What I'm working with Illuminate on, and we'll talk with district on their policy, is we would recommend only doing this at the end of the week on Friday. And so there's an unreconciled report. You can run it, and you can run it to occur 3 days prior. So if you're running it on Friday, you would have it for the prior week up through Tuesday, and you would leave Wednesday and Thursday and Friday off because you want it 3 days prior to that. It will show you all of your unreconciled absences and tardies. I'll show you those details in a minute. And the nice thing with Illuminate, if you run it online, you don't have to print it off and separately go in. You can click onto the student while you're in that unreconciled report, go in and make that change automatically. What we're looking at is working with Illuminate, and this would, again, have to be through district's policy, that we could probably look at in the next few months, not now, but in a few months, getting it where it would be an operational process, where everything I told you, they would have an operational process that on Friday evening, when you guys are already logged off, the teachers have already gone for the day, they would go in behind the scenes and have those same rules where they would look at and then they would automatically flip the code for you. So we're going to look at that option and see, in the district, see how it works. But here what we're doing is not to do it, at every day. You would do it if you're getting them, but at the end of the week, every Friday, we would run it for the prior week and then up through Tuesday. And anybody that's showing on that report, we would change all of those A unreconciled, the same thing with your T unreconciled. We would go ahead and change those over to for unreconciled absences. It's just there in the system. It's not that difficult, just changing it over to those codes. Illuminate provides that, whereas the old systems, you had to log in, go back in. It was a lot of work. Illuminate makes that a lot more streamlined for you. The other here is on independent study. Looking at expanding independent study, we do not want to encourage vacations. Vacations are what they should be doing outside of the regularly scheduled school day. I need to find out what your district's policy is. Some of our districts, they have it 10 days. Some have no more than 15 days. We don't want it. We had one district where the student was out for 60 days on vacation. They were an A student. However, because they were not getting their instructional curriculum in the classroom, they began to fall behind on some of the critical Common Core things that are taught only in the classroom setting. But we do want to use it when the student has a genuine situation where they can't. It's not a vacation, it's where they genuinely cannot be in the regular classroom due to chronic asthma, an extended illness of that sort. By regulations, we're required to provide them homework and instruction. We might as well look at providing that opportunity through independent study so we don't lose the ADA and it doesn't go as an absence against the child. That's a nice thing with independent study. It doesn't count as an absence when the work is completed. The other here is operational. We don't have to focus on the entire year, but what I would do is focus on your high absences, things when you know it's seasonal, especially the flu season coming up, kind of get geared up for that, be more aware of it. Or if you know certain children that have these high allergies and asthma, work with administration on what we can do to have a transitional combo classroom, seat-based program, where if the student's out more than they're in the classroom, we would do independent study and have the classroom seat option available when they're well enough to attend. We have some children who are that seriously ill with some of these sicknesses. So here, it's where we would get the homework assignments, work that's comparable. They don't have to do 3 or 4 weeks at once. Everybody's under that false assumption that we have to give them everything at once. No, they could do up to a week, and then it's kind of like you could have the parents come in and pick it up or submit to them the work for the second week. You don't have to have the teachers get everything for up to a full month. They can do a week at a time, just as they would with homework. So just as they do when they're out ill with homework, you don't do a full month, you do up to a few days or a week, and that's what they complete. Then subsequently the parents come back and get the work for them. So here's what you want to do is understand that it's strictly voluntary and from both the parent and the student. Yes? Okay. This is short term. This is short term.
Okay, because I know we already have our, policy that is like 10 days.
What you can do on this one, your policy actually says unless it's due to extenuating circumstances. The reason you would have the 10-day would be for vacation periods, where you do not want to encourage them to take vacations during school, so you limit it to up to 10 days. But under district policy, if due to extenuating circumstances such as an extended illness, you may go ahead and provide for that up to a longer period of time.
So far, I think we're going to stick to what we have right now.
Okay.
Otherwise, it gets pretty abusive,
Oh, not for illnesses, though. Not for the illnesses. Like if it's a genuine illness, you would want to look at that, like chicken pox, mono, those things that are over the 5 consecutive school days.
But this would be to be out for a month. We can get independent study for 2 weeks. And then they, last year I had some that scanned it to me before the 2 weeks was up, so they would get credit for that. And then they were unexcused for the next 2 weeks.
Yeah, see, that's where with the extenuating circumstances, because you knew they were out sick, had that illness. Oh, vacation, no, that's fine. Yeah, vacations, no, we don't want to accommodate more than the 10 days.
And then we dropped them, and then we made them go through the district and increase.
All right, that's fine because your policy for that type. Yeah, you don't want to encourage them taking advantage for vacations and extended, but for illnesses, for the illnesses on that,
I think, at least for myself, where I think things are getting a little cattywampus here, independent study is different than home hospital. I've had kids that had, because of health issues, couldn't be at school for the foreseeable, like 2 weeks or whatever. So that should be home hospital and not independent study.
I'm not really, if we're looking at, let me kind of go over this. Let me go through on this. One of the things is too, the district has, you have guidelines. If a student doesn't complete the work in terms with the agreement, the district is not required to make that available to them at a future date. So if I have students who do not complete assignments while they're out, then that means they're not meeting the criteria for participation, so we don't have to continue providing it. But when we get into, these are areas like students who are out in the entertainment industry, the main one would be health problems. So let me cover the health problems with you. These would be more like mono, where the children are going to be out more than 5 consecutive days. We got the flu. Some of the children have been out for 3 weeks with the flu situations. Pneumonia, bronchitis. We've got asthma. I know my son had severe asthma where sometimes he was out for 2 weeks because he couldn't breathe. He'd get in there and then he would just have issues. So during those times, the independent study works well. That would be the regulations allow. Home and hospital would be for situations where they're not capable of doing more than 20 hours, 20 to 30 hours of comparable seat work through independent study. This is where they have severe trauma and they're limited where they can only do up to 5 hours of direct instruction under a teacher. That's the home and hospital. It was designed for those situations. But the regulation allows that we may, in lieu of home and hospital, provide for the students independent study so that they're still doing their comparable seat work, they're capable of it, they don't have a severe illness that they can't do, they only can do like 5 hours max per week. That's when we would use it. So this one is, like today, if I notice the parents, they call in, they say the child has bronchitis. This is day number 3. I get the agreements in. I gather the teachers able to provide even the following day homework assignments for those. Then we can begin independent study as of the date that the agreement's signed. So they sign it today, the parent, the student, the teacher. We can begin it today. And if the doctor says or the parent says they're going to be out for 3 weeks, we can make it for the 3 weeks. If they turn sooner, we can always end the agreement prior to that date. If they're going to be out beyond the 3 weeks, we could issue a new agreement. We'll get into more details on that part.
Only 3 independent studies throughout the course of their education at K through 12.
All right, so we'll be looking at that. I'll work with administration on exceptions. So that would be more for genuine ones, the bronchitis, the flu, those. We do not want it for vacations. We do not want it for people just to go off for social events or family. We do not want that. That's what we don't want to encourage, but we want to do the ones where they're genuine cases that typically would be home and hospital. Home and hospital costs the district $100 and you're only getting $55 because it's 1 hour direct instruction. I had students, why we did independent study was we used to only do home and hospital. I had students that were in the high school that were out for 6 months, and then because they had home and hospital, they didn't have adequate credits for graduation. They came back and they were behind because of home and hospital. Whereas for those students, if we'd been able to have the independent study program, they would have kept current with their courses and been able to come back into a full course of study.
Last year I had a couple that went abroad, and they gave me the dates when they will be back this time, that time. And then they started sending me saying, oh, my daughter got sick, so here's a doctor's note from India or wherever they were. And I know because the teacher said, told me, the child said, no, they're not coming back for 6 weeks, not 4 weeks. So
All right.
they have this planned already. So how do you handle that?
Well, that one you knew they took it out for vacation. So that one is debatable when they come back. I mean, that is highly suspicious when they, all of a sudden the child's sick and they're already over the. So if you can enforce your policy, these are the ones where the child, they're there. and you know they are genuinely sick. You've got the nurse, the doctors are providing that information. So those are the exceptions.
They want to stay until something else.
Those are ones where that's been the pattern. If you went back for the last couple of years, you probably see that same pattern. The child always gets sick around this time, and we always seem to take our trips around this time. So that's a pattern, that's a trend, and the regulations say that reasonable doubt. So if you have reasonable doubt, you follow policy, and it's up to the 10 days, and the ones beyond that, those aren't. So we're not saying, we're not encouraging you to do that for those situations, only for the ones that you know are genuine. You have no doubt that those are actually indeed. We're here to help the children transition and maintain current while they're in their study. So we'll go off of that one. You also can have your health evaluation by your nurse, because one of the things is we can't find out the reasons for it. We can provide the note, but they're not required to provide us confidential information as to why the child's ill. Because always remember, it's confidential information. We can ask for that they actually were seen by the doctor, but we can't ask for the reasons for the illness. Yeah, the doctor can state the child, with the thing stating that this child needs to be out of school because of this.
That's what I'm asking.
That would be district policy, and I would do it on the ones where you genuinely know you're going to need it. So if you have patterns, you can ask for additional evidence and proof. The other one here, so we'll kind of get off of the independent study so I can go in to the others, but the key would be generally at the elementary level, your classroom teacher manages that right for your short term. They are the teacher of record for independent study short term, so they would, because they are the one teacher that's there, so they could be the independent study teacher. Student work samples, you're only required to do one page, not the entire packet, out of each one of the course subjects, just as evidence that the student did the work, that it was course assignments. It's not a duplicate of the same thing everybody's been getting during that time frame. We had some that, the auditors require that. Also for the ADA, the teacher should say it's worth, 1 ADA out of 2, or if you have them out for 10 days, 8 out of 10. They're the ones that need to sign and certify that. So it sounds like you guys have that. The other one is records. These are subject to audit. So the list that I have there, you need to keep those up to, from the date it's created, 4 years. It's the current school year plus 3 additional school years. So that's why we always say 4 years, unless you're audited. If you're audited and they have those, that 4-year window starts over again. So hopefully that would be rare, and your district office would tell you when that situation happens. But most of this, these are the information that you need to keep. We'll get into the details. The other one is the students, again, they have to be officially enrolled in your schools. Can't just have them come in and be enrolled in an independent study program. You have to show in the regulations where they would attend their seat-based program. So they have to be officially enrolled in a school of the district.
Study over the 12 years.
Yeah, they, well, when we get into, there's the program, what we're going to have is what's called a program attendance override. And what it does is it tracks it by independent study so that we're able to pull a separate report out for those students. It shows the dates they were on independent study. So you're going to love it. It's set up, gives you a much easier way of tracking and reconciling those students. Any questions up to that point? Yes.
Back to teacher sign off. I
Okay.
have a team teaching situation. I have a teacher that teaches Monday, Tuesday, and another teacher that teaches Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. Who signs the sheet?
You would have both of them sign. Have them both sign. Yeah, because you've got the schedule. It shows the teachers, so they'll both be signing and dating it.
Well, what I've done is I printed 2 separate ones because one's here and I have the other one signed.
Oh, it's perfect. And then you just keep them together.
And then some of the teachers I've been changing for late. The teachers have marked them tardy. Not everyone's come to the office. I've been putting in the notes section. Teacher marked them late. Student didn't come to the office, and I changed it to an R.
That's fine.
Okay.
Yeah, because the teacher's record will stay. And then what you'll be doing is your note will be there, plus you'll have the notes. You'll have notes as to why you did that. Right, because you have more evidence than the teacher does that that student should be an R versus an L. You can do that.
I wanted to ask you, you were saying about the teacher sign-off sheets, okay, we have them sign them weekly, but then you had said that if a student is marked absent, no parent has called, you're giving them 72 hours to call. So we've already printed off the sign-off sheet for that week, so we're gonna have to print off another one to?
No, the reason is that the teachers, when they're signing, they're only signing as of what they actually put into the system, which would be the A, unreconciled. They're not signing off that the student was unexcused or excused. They're not signing off on those reasons. All they're signing off on was these students were either absent, present, or tardy in my classroom. That's why Illuminate has that teacher, so whatever that is, because we know even with independent study, those are not going to be within the 3 days. Those might be 5 to 10 days after the fact.
So I have been, when it's A, I go into my absence reconciliation. I've been reconciling those A's as unexcused. Should I be leaving them as A's no matter what?
Well, only after the 70, you can, after 72 hours, you can, through district policy, go in and change those to unexcused. The regulations allow us to, and that's why I was going to work with Illuminate so that we could set up an operational procedure. You're clearing those as you go, but by Friday, what you'll be doing is looking at running an unreconciled report that's basically for, you're going to have Wednesday, Thursday, you're going to be running them for the prior week and then Monday and Tuesday, but not for Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday because that would still be within that 72-hour period. And then you'll just be changing those unreconciled over to reconciled. If you have the codes, you'll change it to the codes or to the unexcused.
Comes back after that 72-hour period, they get the report card, and they go, oh, no, Jimmy was sick that day. Do we have to go back?
No, you do not.
No,
you do not. The regulations require that they notify you. This is why with your policy clearly states that it is their responsibility to notify you, and the district is under no obligation to go back. If it's their first time and you know that they indeed are probably being truthful with you, you have the right to change those. But I have parents, they would tell me anything they thought I would do to change those from unexcused to over. Like grandma died 12 times. Well, they only had one grandmother, so it's just like, it's becoming unbelievable. Yeah, the regulations, and we can state that in our policy that it will be turned to an unexcused. And you have it on your auto dialers, I'm assuming, on an information you're going out. So it's like we have it everywhere. We've communicated it in every fashion. So when you're walking in, we're even telling you that you have to clear these absences with us. We are not obligated to go back and change it.
Just to make sure I'm doing this correctly. So when I get my unreconciled absences, I make phone calls, I leave messages, I write down the phone numbers and put left message, whatever, and then Bright Arrow does their thing. And at the end of the day, if I don't get a response, and that I think I've done my due diligence, then that becomes an unexcused absence.
That's right.
So that's okay.
That's fine.
Because I don't like leaving A's at the end of the day.
No, you're doing your due diligence because the law is really clear. You're actually giving them an extra day because the regulation said the same day, no later than the following day. And your district's policy is we'll give them one extra day, benefit of the doubt. And then you're clearing those after that and you have policy on it. You've communicated it. It's very clear to the parent. We have to enforce it. If we get too lenient on it, then they believe it's back for us to do this. And ours was to take the reasons and to make sure the students were there. It wasn't to continually follow up and say, please return my phone call. I really need you to tell me. Because as you know, if you miss work, you don't sit at home and wait for your employer or school principal to call you and say, why didn't you show up for work today? Can you please call me and tell me why you're not showing up for work today? I mean, this policy, it's necessary that we do this because it is the parents' responsibility and it will instill in them and their children good habits that will carry into the workforce when they actually do become employable after they graduate. So it's necessary.
Both an A and a U, unexcused absence, generate a truancy letter?
The unexcused, if it's on the A, will not. The reason is on the A, for the SARB, but I've worked in that whole SARB process and also the state. Unreconciled means that I have taken no action. I'm just using the default. They want evidence that you've done your due diligence. When you go into the SAR process, they want due diligence that you made every effort to call. Here's our auto dialer. Here's our logs showing our comments and our notes. We did our due diligence. Our policy was this, and we adhere to our policy. That's what they want. So it needs to be changed from an A, unreconciled, over to the unexcused.
Yeah, I just had one, family go to India for a wedding, and she told us 3 days before she was leaving, and she insisted on an independent study, and we said no.
Nope, we're not required to provide it.
You will be blocked after 10 days. So if you want to apply for it when she comes back, she can, otherwise, and she went back to the teacher, and she said, for him to try to talk to me. So my principal said, no, they don't go to the teachers, they come to the office.
That's right. Yeah, they do. Yep. And that's why it's there, because you have the 10-day policy. It's very clear. Some of my districts have gone to where no unexcused absences is allowed for independent study, and vacations, so family social events are considered unexcused because they're not meeting Ed Code 48205 criteria. So some districts have actually implemented that they're not even allowing vacations because it became so abusive.
In place, she doesn't want to give independent studies to any kinders because that's a very soft subject because
They need to be in the classroom at that age.
They can't do that.
The key is the criteria for participation. If the child that you know they want to be successful and they need to be in the classroom setting, the administration has the right to deny it because the child they know will not be successful on it. Let me give you guys like a 5-minute break. Is that all right? And then we'll get into the technical session here.